I think that they are around us, just in another form. You know, they're here. You know, they're with us all the time.
I think that the evidence is so strong that we can predict where this is going to wind up. The idea of the survival of something one day is going to be good, solid science. And the people who don't believe in this are going to be viewed as cranks and deviants.
It is impossible for the human mind to conceive of a time when it no longer exists, when consciousness does not exist. So we invent all kinds of scenarios to believe that something of awareness will still go on when we are dead. There's a biological necessity for every single-celled organism to stay alive so that it can reproduce its DNA. That's what drives all of evolution. As soon as we get to an organism like ourselves, which is a thinking, processing organism with a psychology, we transmute the biological necessity to stay alive into a psychological necessity to stay alive. So we create this entire mythology about what happens after Aunt Marge is theoretically dead. She stays alive, which is a way of reassuring each of us that we ourselves are going to do the same thing and always be alive. Our obsession with needing to believe that there is something after death has been magnified by modern technological medicine. A couple of generations ago, when people died at home, we watched the reality of death. Death is a process. Death is not an acute event. We would watch events unfurl, as it were, until finally that person died. It was a natural phenomenon. It was expected. It was understood. There was a lot of experience with it because so many more people died, and died at home right in front of us. Now what happens is someone is torn away from us, secreted away, hidden away in a hospital environment. We don't see any of the natural unfolding. And at a given moment, a young physician comes out and says, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but your mother has just passed on," or whatever euphemism they use. But there's got to be more. There's a need to hold on to that person. There's a need to see a continuity, that this has not ended so abruptly. And I think that adds to the entire mix, and it's one of the reasons for this huge explosion in people's seeking out that something else, seeking out the extra days and weeks of what you might call post-death life.
My beloved Aunt Cornelia died in January of 1994. That was about 3 months before I finished my first novel. And so I wrote a dedication to her because she was precious. And the last line of the dedication was, "She is eternal." And as soon as I wrote those words, I felt a kiss right here. And I gasped and I cried. And it confirmed for me that she was still there loving me, and that she was still there for me and supporting me and believing in me. It was the most beautiful experience to have happen.
My father died in 1975, and 3 months after his death, my mother and I were standing in his room when we felt a breeze of air just blow us by, and all the windows in the house were closed, and it was really cool, and I could smell his cologne, which was Aquavelva, and I tell my mom, "That's my dad, you know."
In 1971, my older brother passed away from cancer. And about 3 months after he passed away, he woke me up in the middle of the night. And he was at my doorway, standing regular, with clothes on, with a background behind him, a little like a yellowish background behind him. Then he said, I just want to let you know that I'm okay. I knew it actually happened. I knew it wasn't a dream.
Have I ever had an after-death communication? Of course I have. My mother died when I was 11, and I would communicate with my mother. I knew that this was not real, and I also knew, even at the age of 11, that I had to do it. I had to keep her alive in some way, because I couldn't let her go. That's a very different thing, though, than people who honestly believe that that person they're communicating with exists in some intellectual or spiritual form, and that the communication is true.
When you think about the kind of things that happen that make us think there might be survival of consciousness, you could roughly divide them into two classes. The things that just happen without any intermediaries to people, the apparitions, the dreams, the sense of presence, things like that. And then there's the things that are literally mediated by people who call themselves mediums.
Now, there is a male who is coming through who I see is filling up with fluids, which means he either passed from pneumonia or he had some type of congestive heart failure. Do you understand that?
That would probably be my father.
Now, what's a medium? It's a person who thinks that somehow they can contact deceased spirits. Now, I say somehow because that's about as precise as we can get at this point.
I can feel his presence, I just can't hear him. But I can feel him.
He had a tracheotomy.
We could call it, say, telepathy, okay? If telepathy is mind-to-mind communication and a mind survives death, then supposedly the mind of the medium could telepathically communicate with the mind of the spirit, and that sounds like we're getting more precise. But while we know that telepathy occurs, we don't understand it.
It's not mind reading. It is telepathic. It's a telepathic communication between the soul of the other side and me. And it's during that exercise, that telepathic bridge that's created, that I will clairvoyantly, clairaudiently, clairsentiently be able to interpret the symbology of what's coming through. Who had the chicken running in the backyard? This is connected to Anna or Anthony?
My grandmother, who is Anna, her sister had a chicken farm in Long Island.
Oh, I think that might be significant. How many else had chicken farms in Long Island?
I think that, quote, a good medium, I don't think there is such a thing. But some people are skilled because they've interacted with people and they give a kind of psychological counseling and they can read the expression of the person and to give back responses that may work better than others.
Because your mom is coming through. She's showing me pink roses. When I see pink roses, it's their way of expressing their love to you. She's passing this on to you. I also see a white flower coming up in June. So that to me means that there's a celebration or a birthday either in the 6th month. You understand that?
It's my birthday.
Happy birthday from your mom.
But this is a kind of psychological interaction, interpretation, and not communication with the dead beyond.
She's telling me to talk about a dress. This dress has some type of specific connection to her. Either you have her dress and you were smelling it, but she's telling me to talk about some type of clothing issue, and I feel like I'm smelling it. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, she's telling me she was with you when you were doing this?
When he was talking about smelling an article of clothing, I was actually doing that. I was smelling my mother's robe maybe a month ago.
And you tend to remember the hits. A medium may give you 20 responses to a question, and that medium may be wrong on 18.
Are you one of 3?
No.
How many?
But the 2 he got. He said that my brother had lung cancer, and he did. Okay.
Is your sister older?
Younger.
Is her mother passed?
No.
Your mom's mom is here?
Yes.
But the dates were wrong, the places were wrong, and many other things were wrong.
So I don't know if you're contemplating having a child?
No.
Okay.
But people are so eager to think that there's contact with the dead that they focus on the hit that he or she may have gotten.
My field has a bullseye on it, and people are constantly trying to shoot us down. So I try to be as specific as I can so that people have to say, well, you know, such and such could have been a general thing. But what about this? Now, somebody, again, has a very weird, this is like the weird name corner. Somebody has a weird name that sounds like Inky or Pinky.
My son.
What's the name?
No, we call him Binky.
Binky.
Belief in an afterlife gives consolation to people.
Before, I was going to, with the bee, the crazy bee sound you mentioned.
It gives them a kind of crutch to lean on to get through adversity. So I would attribute this to a deep felt